All right, everyone, we're going to jump into the retention, deletion, and e-discovery lab part 2 here. This one should be short and sweet. We're going to look at the labels themselves and see how they interact in the environment. And then what we're going to do here is kind of just tidy up the different places that we can place those labels. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the Admin Center. We're going to go to the Compliance Center, and just to do a recap of what we have done, we're going to come over here to Data Lifecycle Management. We're going to come here to Microsoft 365. We're going to come over here to Labels. And you'll see that we have 3 labels created. Now these two here, the Keep for 1 year, Keep for 10 years, those are ones that we're going to be playing around with here. This Project X, remember, we created that as a, when it wants to load up here, it created that as a auto labeling policy. This one has been successfully enabled. Doesn't mean that we've applied any labels to it here. Unfortunately, this one here is takes a week, as we know. It could take up to a week for that to run, and honestly, it's really not that fancy, so it's not worth the time and effort to kind of just wait for this to run. But with that being said, jumping over here to the labels, we are going to work with the Keep for 10 years and Keep for 1 year. Now remember, we created a policy here where we publish that out to the entire organization here. It's Keep for 1 year, Keep for 2, and that is pretty much pushed out to all users and SharePoint sites and OneDrives and all of that inside of the organization. Now, what we're going to do here is we're actually going to show what is the experience for the end user. You know, where do they kind of start with this, and how do they work with this? Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to use, the first one here is going to be inside of SharePoint. So we're going to open up SharePoint, and we're going to work on whatever project site here, or excuse me, whatever SharePoint site works best for us here. We can do Project X. Let's do Project X, actually. So use Project X here. We've been playing around with this one here already, and you see that we do have sensitivity labels that have been placed on here. This one has been automatically placed, as you see, and we have gone through that was a different conversation for a different time for sensitivity labels. Now, the way we've added this column here just to show the sensitivity labels makes it easier for our users to be able to see. We're going to do the exact same thing here when it comes to retention. We're going to go to Add Column, Show Hide. We're probably going to add more than what we need, but sometimes it's best. We're going to hit Retention Label, Label Applied, and Label Applied By. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Apply. And you'll see right here, we're just blank in all of these. This is a nice way of starting building out and kind of understanding the importance of building out SharePoint views in terms of the columns and such. We can make this more of a template, so then we can actually see this information when we're interacting with the locations and such. So at this point here, we have no retention labels on any information inside of here. So if we look at it, we want to be able to place, let's just say we're going to take this document here, and we're going to make it, we're going to give it the Keep for 1 year. So we're going to start off at the micro of this, and we're going to start building upon that because we can go in, well, pretty granular here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Document, hit the 3 little dots over here, the little ellipses, come to Details, and in just a second, under Properties here, we will see Apply Label. Now if I click on it, we will see Keep for 10 years, Keep for 10 years, excuse me, Keep for 1 year, Keep for 10 years, and then None. Right now it's set to None. We are going to want to keep this for a year. So we click on it. And then as you see over here, we have, and we can go ahead and hit the X now, you'll see over here is that we have the retention label, Keep for 1 year. Retention label was applied at this time. This is not, it's helpful, just more information, I guess, than anything. And we can see also who added it. So we can see here, obviously this was me. I'm the one that added this label. Now, let's just say here that we want to get a little bit bigger and broader with this here. This is a very manual process. So maybe here what we want to do is we want to keep or create a folder inside of here for our users. Keep for 1 year. So we have a folder inside of here that we want to be able to have any new information that gets added to this folder. So we want to start training our users that, you know, hey, we'll have these separate folders in here. Well, what we can do here is we can actually hit the little ellipses, go to Details, and we can apply a label here. And anything new that is created inside of here will go away or excuse me, not go away, but will be kept for 1 year. It will inherit these. So if we go ahead and go inside of here, and we create a new PowerPoint, let's just say, you'll see that every new piece of document that comes in here will inherit, keep for 1 year. So at this point here, anything new will also be kept, and that's helpful because what we can do here is that we can start building out folder structures maybe. I don't know, we'll do this one for keep for 10 years. And you see here is that we have, we're going to take this document right here, and we are going to move it. But first, obviously, before we move it here, we want to go to keep for 10 years. We want to apply the 10-year label, I suppose, would make more sense. Come over here, apply the label, keep for 10 years. And you see that that one is now on there, kept for 10 years. We come over here to document. We move to, and then we can just put it directly inside of here. Now, based off of when we click inside of here, what do we think we are going to see? That was labeled with 1 year. Is it going to override that? Let's find out. Oh, what do you know? It didn't. It still says keep for 1 year. There is a priority here that works when we're talking about retention labels. So the most explicit always wins here in this instance. The most explicit action is what I'm referring to. So since I manually labeled this as keep for 1 year, it will always supersede any kind of inheritance on here because, again, I'm a user. I know better than the system. Okay, the system can be as smart as AI as possible, yes, but as a user, I will always know more than the system. So at this point here, as a user, I can come in here and I can manage this label and say, okay, well, this needs to be kept for 1 year because it is specific type of data. I know that better than the computer does. And that's fine. So we can always override, so to speak. Now, again, any new documents that we create in here will have the 10-year inheritance on them. Now, if they have the 10-year inheritance on them, and let's just say here we want to move this, move to, and then we'll come over here to the 1 year. So that's gone now. Let's jump back into the 1 year. That's persistent. So no matter where those documents move, again, as this kind of puts a final, hammer or nail into that, is that no matter where it moves, they're persistent. These retention labels will follow the document unless I want to come in here, go to details, and override. So I can come in here and say, oh no, we want to put this one as 1 year. So at this point here, what we've done is we've kind of taken it up to the next level here, where anything inside of this folder will be kept for a year, anything over or kept inside of here, but no matter where we move it, they will take that label with them. Now, we have another way of going about this here. We can go up another level if we so desire. So we have right now, if we come to documents, the document library itself, which right now we just have documents. What we can do here is if we come over here to library settings, we go to more library settings, we'll see an option here where it says apply label to items in this list or library. So when we click on that, it will here provided by your organization, help retain and protect, blah, 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 blah. You can read all of that, sure. So what we can do here is we can keep for 1 year or keep for 10 years. And we can also check to apply to already existing things that are in there that are not labeled explicitly. So in this instance here, we are keeping for 1 year and we're going to apply to existing items in the library. So we hit save. And in just a second, well, these are going to take a little bit of time here, but these new ones, once that SharePoint indexer kind of runs, it will look at these here. So any kind of new document, no matter where I create it inside of here, is going to automatically have the 1 year. As you see there, the new one is created. We're just waiting for those to be indexed and then slap that label on. It'll take a little time, but not really that big of a deal. You'll understand that in time as it comes. It'll just go through there. And you can see right here is that, hey, keep for 1 year. That was a new document that I created. Now, if I were to, again, just to reiterate here, take this one and let's move it to keep for 10 years. All right, let's actually cancel that. Let's call this something else because we already have something called document in there. Let's call this document new, appropriately labeled here. Then we're going to move it over for 10 years. Over there. So as you see, and as you see here, we still have that 1 year. So it is persistent across the board. And it will be that way. So as long as they've been labeled, they will continue to kind of have that labeling aspect applied to them. That will be persistent. And again, that is by design. So what happens here in this instance, we have created kind of a simple hierarchy of labeling for retention of data. Now, again, this is for a very, I will say, a narrow circumstance. For large organizations, maybe they have different data classification schedules. But the question you may have here is that, well, when do I do what? Well, the answer is I can't tell you because every organization is completely different from the next, and IT should not be the one that's deciding this. You could see here is that, yeah, we can hit very small niche circumstances here. We can create in our kind of our SharePoint creation aspect here. We can have sites that are created with these labels applied to the document libraries so that when somebody creates a folder or something in there, it automatically inherits that. So we can have that along those lines, but to that point there is that this is starting to get pretty granular and it's actually requiring a lot of users, because that's a lot to go in. Then they have to come in and hit the retention label and everything on them to make sure. Whereas those adaptive scopes that we talked about sometimes make a little bit more sense. Again, if we go in with that SharePoint kind of nomenclature of 2-digit department code dash team name or just something simple like that, we could say that if it starts off with HR, it's automatically going to inherit that, and we don't have to really do any kind of this kind of funky labeling. However, this does make sense in certain circumstances. It really does, and it really depends on the environment here. So really what comes down to it is that, retention labeling, the manual aspect of it, is a difficult ask for a lot of people, and for the most part, most of my customers don't necessarily want to do this because it can be very complicated. So the idea here is we have options that are available to us, and that's really what I'm showing you here, is it really depends on your organization. We can come back here and also look around the idea of potentially maybe we want to have specific sensitive information types or trainable classifiers be labeled specifically. So again, maybe we can use some different things there, is that, if it contains a credit card number in it, it wants to be retained for a period of time. That way we'll always know where it's at. So overall here, like I said, this one is going to be pretty short, sweet. Not a whole lot else we can do here. I mean, again, I showed you from SharePoint. It's the exact same thing from OneDrive. What we can do here, though, is we can jump into Exchange real quick. And if we come over here to Start, we come to Outlook, we'll have some options in here. Oh, let's sign me out here. Give me just a second here while I sign back in, because apparently my token just died in the middle of this. So give me just a second here. I'll sign back in and I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. Took it just a second or so. Okay, so we're going to open up Outlook here. And here's our emails that we have. Just a couple of FYIs here, I guess more than anything, is that, by the way, this is a alert and it's just informational. So e-discovery search has been started. So we can see that, hey, this person started an e-discovery search. Remember, we did that on the last lab there where we were checking to see, hey, did this person do X and Y and Z? So this is an alert, so it is actually broadcast out to all the administrators on the tenant. So again, just a little bit of more FYI than anything, which is why it kind of jumps into that ethical boundary. Like I said, it's not a good idea to just do searches for data collection. That's not what you should be doing as any type of IT administrator. So just a couple of things here. Now, we This one here is a little bit different. Works because of publishing out the retention labels, again, can take up to a week in some circumstances to show. And it really has to do with what's called the Managed Folder Assistant. The Managed Folder Assistant runs an exchange, and as it processes retentions and deletions and all of that, it takes time. So what we'll see here is we may or may not have them. But the easy way to do it is that if we need to, from a user's experience, we would come up under here, just right-click on the email, and you go to Advanced Options, and you would see Assign Policy. And we don't have our 1-year keep, our other one here, so they're not actually, the Managed Folder Assistant has not run yet on this particular mailbox. Since that was only about a day ago I ran that, it doesn't surprise me. However, we do see our Exchange ones that are available here, which we can potentially use if we want, but these are not the unified ones. So these are ones that we generally probably want to start looking at potentially getting rid of. So at that point there, it's using the parent folder policy. That is what the default is. We could, if we wanted to, again, from a user's perspective, assign policy here, which again, is we see we don't have any in here. But when those do get processed and they do pop up under here, we will see the assign policy, and we can assign that to folders here on the mailbox if we wanted to. So just like we saw with SharePoint there, we can get granular. But again, that requires a lot from the users. They have to understand that, hey, there's a lot that you need to do to classify your data. And I'll be honest with you, this has never worked. This is why personal tags never truly work. It's just not an easy process for end users to comply with, which is why, again, I am more of a fan when we're talking about retention, keeping it simple, retention deletion, keeping it simple, and kind of either using the adaptive scopes or the static scopes, depending on your licenses that you have, of course, too. The adaptive scopes do require an E5, whereas the regular, just standard static ones, you can have those with any of the enterprise level licenses. So with that being said, just wanted to show you that. Like I said, there's nothing here. Unfortunately, I can't show you much more just because of the fact that the Managed Folder Assistant hasn't run yet. Like I said, it's a weekly occurrence. Don't know when that's going to happen, and it's not worth the time since it's just a simple applying a label there. It's the exact same concept as we saw before. So with all that being said, like I said, this one here I knew was going to be short, sweet, kind of to the point, just to show you the user's experience around retention. When you use them, there is no best practice. It really comes down to, remember, corporate compliance is the big deal here, and that's the driver of this. So this is a multifaceted ordeal, not just IT. So that is all we have for this particular one here. Thank you for this one here. We're going to jump into our next discussion, which is not going to have a lecture around it because it's just one of those things that you need to see it to understand it, because it's a very modern concept and very powerful, very, very powerful. So we're going to talk about communication compliance and insider risk management in our next discussion. So thank you for jumping on this one here, and I'll see you over on the next.